right, welcome back to Development Through Nature. And I'm here at Kerrywood Nature Center today with a former student and somebody who's become a good friend and a colleague in the practice of sharing nature with people. So could you introduce yourself and let us know who you are?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Lev. I've been graduated for 2 years, I believe. In that time I've worked as a natural history interpreter at the Kerrywood Nature Center, as well as some river guiding with the Riverwatch Institute of Alberta, taking people out into nature, telling them what I know, and helping them form great lasting experiences.
So we're here in one of your favorite places here, and you spent almost 2 years with this as your daily workspace.
Right.
And maybe give us a little overview of what you're going to do with us today, what you're going to show us, and just give us a little heads up of what to expect.
Yeah, I'll try my best over the course of this video to walk you guys through what's happening in my head when I bring groups out here, before I bring groups here, and how I work to get what's in my head into their head. Yeah, safety, fun, whatever I need to do to get them happy and safe. I'll try and work you guys through today.
Excellent. So we're going to give you a tour of the place. We're going to go through some safety, and then Lev's going to share some of his favorite tips and tricks for working with everything from the very smallest of humans to some of the biggest of humans.
So this is the entryway to our primary activity space here at the Nature Center. This is where our preschool class plays. This is where day camp will play. School groups, all sorts of people join us down this little trail into the area. Prior to groups coming out here, we do have some safety things that we look for, and they're the same things that I re-look for as I'm leading my group down here, because there's, working in an outdoor space, there's always the potential for things to have shifted. Maybe a new tree fell over, maybe where it was hung up is no longer super secure, so we need to make sure we're looking for a couple of these things when we bring our groups into a space. For me here, the biggest thing I always check is, because this is a sanctuary, we're lucky Kerrywood sits on about 400 acres in the middle of a city. My first check is usually just wildlife. We see deer down here, we see coyotes down here, so my first check is like, is there just anything kind of big bumbling around? Moose sometimes come through, so is there anything super big wildlifey? So I take a look for stuff like that, and then my next check is, are all the trees that were vertical yesterday or the day before, are they still up straight? Are their roots secure? Is anything leaning over? Is anything hung up that could maybe come down if the wind picked up while I was out here? So I want to make sure that nothing's going to fall on myself or the people who have trusted me with their safety for the day. And then once the site is as secure and safe as a natural space can be, obviously there is still risk, there's good risk, and we want that. But after there's nothing crazy going to happen, nothing's going to fall on us, then I bring the group further in. And usually these trees, I find, form a nice semicircle. They almost herd the group in, and they keep us in a space. So I try and get everyone into a circle with our backs against these trees here, and I have a nice little amphitheater I can work with. And here's where I'll set boundaries. These can be especially important for younger kids. And I work off of 4 boundaries in each direction around us. So the first in front of me, there's a slight rise. So I'll always say you can be on the slope, but at the top, that's too far, because that's an easy identifiable boundary for kids from grade 2 up to grade 12. It's very easy for them to identify, okay, that's a line where I can't go. And my next step that I'll tell folks not to go past is the path we came down. I'll often do the same thing. There's a slope there, so you can be on the slope, but where it kind of flattens out and where it turns towards the cement path, you can't go. If I have teachers, which is always wonderful to have, I will try and place teachers or other adults at certain points as well, so that if kids forget over the course of an activity, they're still able to be redirected by an adult. This boundary here changes based on what we are doing. Sometimes I will have kids range out maybe about 100 feet. And one of my boundaries that I really love is horizontal logs, because again, it's like a line. It works very easily. It's very identifiable. So I will pick usually where those sticks are kind of leaned up each other into a play fort. That's always a really good boundary because it's super identifiable. I try to set firm boundaries that are easy for people to understand and physically see, especially when you're working with younger kids. The boundary I'm facing now is always a little bit tougher for youth to work around. So that's when I'll usually just have another interpreter or an adult volunteer help me with, and I will set them back maybe 30 steps in that tree. I like to try and tell kids that snapped off spruce with the big hole in the middle, that doesn't always work. So I utilize my adult volunteers quite a bit with this boundary in particular, just because it has the most gray area.
Excellent. And the reality is we're all working in different places, and you're fortunate to work in a place where people come to you with staff and parents. In the case of folks working in early childhood education, you are the staff. And so you have to strategically place your folks around and say, okay, these are the boundaries we're working with. And you know it well enough that you can come in knowing where you want your boundaries to be.
Yes.
Excellent. Let's move on to the next thing. Thank you.
Cool.
So when we're working with kids, we often find that kids either don't have a lot of fear, or they have the fears that we have taught them. So Lev, what can we do as educators to make sure we're giving the kids the best information and also not letting our own fears cause the kids to have irrational fears?
Yeah, I work very hard, though sometimes maybe it doesn't look like it, to role model through myself what kind of things we can be doing out here. I will balance beam across logs. Am I maybe a little bit bored at times and keeping myself active? Possibly. But I'm also showing these kids ways they can interact with the space. So I'll walk across logs. I might hop between a log or two. I might slide down a log. I might flip over a log. What's under here? And I try my best to choose my language carefully. I avoid words like watch out or words that impart that maybe the kids shouldn't be doing what they're doing. I try to avoid those words. Before we go into a space, I might say we need to be aware of, if I'm moving a stick, I need to be aware of where the end of my stick is. If I'm climbing, where's my next hand going? Where is my foot going? What's my body doing? So I try to impart words that empower the participants, words that tell them it's okay what you're doing, but can you do it safely? It's awesome that you climbed. I'm a little concerned about how high up you are. How can we work on getting back down?
So you're constantly working through awareness, keeping their senses fully alert, and also helping them problem solve, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best way to approach life, is there's always going to be challenges. And if we can train people to approach the challenge with care and thoughtfulness, chances are we're all going to get through it.
When I'm working with groups, especially really, really young kids, I really do like to let them play in a space and explore that space as their own until they reach a point where maybe they don't know something. Something's new. It could be a texture, it could be a sight, it could be a smell. Oftentimes I'll tell them to lick things because it's not going to hurt them, and it's a little bit silly and it gets them going. But this tree here has seen a lot of play. Obviously it started with its bark all around it, and kids come and they pick and they play, and it comes off. And one of the things that they find when they bring that outer layer off, this is a really great example of it, is these tunnels chewed into the log by carpenter ants. And of course this is new. It's like tunnels in the wood, it's treasure maps, or it's maybe they don't even know, they have no idea, they have no story for it yet, and so it stops them. And when they stop, you have the time to be like, to explain to them what they're seeing, and they can be like, oh cool, bugs did that. And even on the bark here you can see where the birds have chased, they've needled into the bark chasing the carpenter ants. And kids can take that as, I learned about birds and bugs, or alternatively they keep playing and their imagination tells them that these are separate treasure tunnels, or these are maps, or whatever their brain tells them they are. They've explored a space on their own, they've come to something they didn't know, and you were there to capitalize on them performing their own learning experience, and you just help it hit a little deeper.
Excellent. That's so important. We've talked a lot about that, the idea that play is important, but also as educators we're so just duty bound. We want to teach, but sometimes just kicking back and letting the kids' natural curiosity just take off, and when they ask a question, well, then we can focus in because we've already got their attention. We're not fighting for the attention. Nature's got their attention. That's just a cool example. Thanks for that one. One of the things we have here is, we've talked about it in class, the idea of loose parts play, or having loose parts to do free play with. And I know here at Kerrywood Nature Center, that's one thing that you've really emphasized, is letting the kids loose to just create and find and build and tear down and try again. So why don't you take us through one of your favorite activity areas, or maybe it's actually a favorite of the kids.
It's probably a little bit of both, but over here is our fort area, and it's an awesome pile of logs. This is quite small. I'm sure a lot of it is actually buried under snow right now. Usually we have mountains of sticks that the kids have collected, and this can range from, oh, that's frozen, no, very small ones that a 2 or 3 year old brings over to the pile. And sometimes we'll have logs, like I wouldn't be surprised if at some point myself and maybe 2 or 3 12-year-olds carried this big guy over and added it. So no matter the size of the child in our group, somewhere in the forest is a stick that they can carry, and they can join us in a collaborative project. And I've used these same set of sticks in a few different ways. I've used them kind of seriously, teaching kind of like survival stuff. Like, let's try and make this an actual something we could spend a night in. How do we do that with just sticks? Or I've taken a complete step back and just like, we're going to build a fort. And all I do is make sure the sticks we bring from the forest go on the fort and they don't get swung around like baseball bats at anyone's head. So I've done it both ways, where it's very me educating and trying to get us to a point, while at the same time I've also used these same materials for it to be completely child-led, where I just keep everyone safe and make sure they're having a good time. When it is made, other groups benefit from it as well. They come down, the kids don't know it's there. Staff, we always know this is here. But for participants seeing it for the first time, It's exciting, it's new, they feel like they've come into a place no one's ever been. They're the first one to see it. So even if we don't actively use it in a program, I've done programs where we don't touch it. We're doing something, 30 feet away. It adds to the ambiance of the space. They love it. It's a great way for them to stretch team building skills. It's a great way for them to stretch a little bit of physics learning. How do I lean this up so it stays? How can I make sure I'm safe while I do that? How can I make sure my friends are safe while I'm building? So there's a whole lot of meta skills that kids can learn as they're essentially just playing with sticks in a fort, and it's one of my personal favorites.
Could you address how maybe a group of 2-year-olds might use the space differently than a group of 10-year-olds?
Yeah, totally. So our smallest humans, our preschool class, they might add to it to the point that a 2-year-old can carry a stick, but really what our participants at that age group love, and what our lovely preschool teachers love, is the fact that it's a made space for them to explore on their own without needing to worry about the risk of having a 2-year-old build it. So if I know preschool uses a space, and I know that they do, when I'm building a fort with the kids, I make sure it's safe. Not only for my group, but I know preschool loves it. I know it gives them a place to eat their snack. They feel like they're crawling into a cave. It's a wonderful place for them to explore.
A place for imagination.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what they're going to think about.
That's right.
And then they come up with something awesome. And how often would you tear down a structure like this, or do you just leave it and it just keeps getting added to?
I have seen it completely torn down. Some groups like to build a fort in a different location. So I have seen it completely just a big pile of sticks on the ground. No structure to it whatsoever, because say the group before totally dismantled it. And that's free play. This is loose material for them to do as they wish, and that's part of the fun. So I have seen it completely gone straight to the ground, and I've seen it built up to the point where it's a sunny day and it's dark inside, which provides a nice break from a hot summer day for the kids.
All right, Lev. We've talked about playing, we've talked about loose parts, but something that always comes up with new educators in the outdoors is it safe? What can you tell us about here in central Alberta? So you're located halfway between Calgary and Edmonton. Are there things out here in nature that we really have to be cautious of in essentially a city park or an urban green space? What are your concerns? Are there poisonous plants?
No, I do not have a hesitation to tell participants, sometimes even adults, yes, you can touch this. Feel free to explore this space. I had this conversation once with a she was in grade 2. She was very scared. She was hugging onto my leg. I was like, look, my job is to keep you safe and make sure you have a good time. I would not bring you into a spot where you would be harmed. You are safe here. I will always encourage my participants to please touch, to please pick up, to smell. I'll even tell them to lick it. Are they going to lick the dirt? No, they actually find that quite silly. Will I lick things sometimes to show them that it's fine? Yes. I'll pick things up, I will touch them, I will try to be as tactile with my space as possible.
So you're really trying to role model the best possible behavior. Now, Lev, I've known you for a while, maybe 6-7 years now, and you're pretty comfortable in lots of spaces outdoors. But if there was a new educator who's wanting to take kids out in these beautiful green spaces that exist in our cities, how would they start to learn that information so they can confidently say, there's nothing here that's going to harm me in nature? Where can they go to get that kind of information?
Yeah, so if you're like myself, you happen to be in the central Alberta region, we have the Kerrywood Nature Center, but wherever you are, I would trust that there is a nature center, nature preschool, a good field guide. Go to your local library, find good resources, and educate yourself on the space where you are going to be. There's no reason for me to know the poisonous plants of Oregon because I'm not in Oregon. But I work on finding good sources around me that will tell me, can I tell this kid to just touch, knowing 100% certainty in my heart that they will be fine. So
that's so important, the idea of educating, your self-education. And Lev's right, every city, and even some of our smaller cities in Canada, has a nature center. There's a group of people who are experts in the local plant life. And they would be more than happy to introduce you to an area so that they know you're going to get kids out there. In the end, that's all of our goals, is to get kids out there and to get them safe. Here in Alberta, I think there's 3 or 4 species of plants that are deadly. None of them are deadly if you touch them. You actually have to ingest them and eat them for them to be deadly, and they're actually quite rare. In some parts of Canada, we do have things like poison oak, poison ivy, but they're easily recognizable, and in most city parks, they're going to make sure that that is not where people are moving around and playing, because they want people to be safe. So learning to find that kind of resource is really important. A couple of questions and a Google search, and you've got it. But many of our cities in Canada, Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, we have big animals, wild animals, that thrive in our cities. The big animals here in Red Deer are going to be probably white-tailed deer and mule deer, but what else do we have?
We'll get our moose in town.
A moose is a big animal. Are we worried about those types of animals?
No. They want their space just as much as we want to give it to them. When I am with a group, if we happen to see a large animal, well, the first thing I do is I stop my group and I try to get them as quiet as possible. I go, guys, look. There's something really cool I want to show you, but we need to be quiet. Because that keeps everyone calm, keeps my group calm. It also keeps the animal that is on high alert for everything calm. And I can enjoy a moment as long as I can stretch it, especially the younger the group gets with this animal. They want their space. I work to give it to them. They look at us, they decide, nah, people, and they walk away. Or sometimes they run away.
And a lot of these animals in our urban areas, they're used to people, and they're used to us kind of ignoring them. So if you stop, take a look, and act like you're ignoring it, chances are they're going to ignore you as well. So things like moose and deer really aren't a concern for us, is what I hear you saying.
No.
Excellent. Good news.
We would love to have groups of kids that will spread mud on their faces and will roll around like pigs. That's ideal, and I love those groups. They are so fun. Unfortunately, some kids, you need to get to that spot. They don't start out that way. So, while other kids in my group sometimes are already rolling in the leaves and looking for bugs and moving sticks around, as an educator, I'm not so worried about educating those kids right now. My goal is to make sure they're safe, so I keep an eye on them. But they know what they're doing. They're having a great time. If they have questions, I can address them. For me, one of the most impactful parts of my job, my favorite part of my job, is the participant that is maybe sitting like I'm sitting now, legs crossed, on a log, and this is 9 times out of 10 the log that our apprehensive participants sit on. Well, why is that? It's a good log. There's no bark on this log, not anymore. There was at one point. So it's not dirty, it's not crumbly, it's not sharp, it's not pokey. It's almost sanitized in a sense. But there's a lot to look at here. Just like earlier when we were looking at the carpenter ant tunnels, we have more of them. So there's that to look at. but not being dirty. I can rub my finger on it and it comes back with nothing. So it's clean, but they're still getting a sense of something here. And once they're here, okay, well maybe they try and pull at this. What's here? Because I already know this is soft, this is safe, this isn't going to hurt me. Well, maybe I move over to these. What are these? What are these circles? How awesome is it to find, oh man, darn near perfect circles out in nature? Something maybe a drill would make. There's so much on this log to intrigue them while they're becoming comfortable in this space. And I find it's a good starting point to be like, oh, you really like these tunnels? Well, let me show you where we can find some more. I'll show you how we can find some more. But first we need to get our hands a little dirty. So maybe I can bring them over to a stick and peel the bark off myself as a start point. Look, here's the tunnels. We talk a little about what makes them. This log is a great starting point for that conversation for participants who are a little bit nervous about being out in a space. Maybe they haven't really had that experience with their parents. This could be their first time in a playground that is so different from the one at school. And this log is one of my favorite starting points for that journey with them. It's my favorite part of my job, is to get that journey started with them. It also, depending on the size of the kid, it forms a wonderful natural slide, especially for the younger ones, because all our bumps have been evened out. And sometimes what we have kids do, not that we make them, but they do this because it's slippery. Whoa! They will push themselves along. It's a wonderful log. It's my personal favorite, maybe.
All right, so there you have it. Everyone should have a favorite log in the forest that their kids do. So one of the new and exciting trends in playgrounds is natural playgrounds, full of obstacles and objects and things to move and jump off of, and just a touch of danger. So this is the Imagination Grove here in Kerrywood Nature Center in Red Deer. If you haven't been here, you need to come experience it. All right, kids, are you ready? And go!